Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for a Learning and Growing webinar, Self-Care and Self-Compassion. Let's take care of ourselves by being kind. Our presenter today is Dr. Manjanith Burdekar of Concord. My name is Cameron Muntz, and I'm the member of the sales team here at Hawks Learning. We will have a live Q&A session after the presentation, so please enter any questions into the Q&A as we go. With that being said, I will now hand it over to our presenter.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Manjanith Burdekar. I am an assistant professor of psychology at Concord University. So today we'll be covering a presentation on self-care and self-compassion. Let's take care of ourselves by being kind. One of the reasons that I wanted to do this webinar was due to high stress levels due to COVID-19, as well as for some of you, it's almost the end of the semester. So that can take a lot out of you. So without further ado, here we go. So the objectives of this presentation will be basically defining the concept of self-care and self-compassion. We'll also list examples of self-care, understand compassion fatigue symptoms and professional burnout, as well as identify strategies to self-care and self-compassion. So what is the definition of self-care? It is basically a practice or ritual where we use to reduce stress, cope with the challenges of work, enhance subjective sense of well-being, and replenish energy levels. As you're all aware, it is really hard to do self-care sometimes. Sometimes we talk about self-care a whole lot, but actually doing it can be very, very difficult for a lot of the people. So here's a little bit of our understanding. So what is work-life balance? We talk about this all the time, but what can lead to lack of work-life balance? The effect of smart technology, right? We all use some kind of technology in our everyday basis. So sometimes we extend our working day, right? We tend to work more than we need to. Especially a lot of people working from home are working a lot more than they used to before. Blurred boundaries, especially if you're working from home, how do you have those boundaries? Sometimes those boundaries are blurred. Sometimes people even working from home, working from work, right? They bring some of their work back home or work on the weekends. So making sure how that can cause major difficulties in your work-life balance. Work bleeds into your personal life. So essentially everything you do work-wise might bleed into your personal life. Serious impact on health and well-being. This might cause a lot of difficulties for people in terms of their health and well-being. Self-care is more important now than ever. This is due to a lot of difficulties around mental health and COVID-19. We are seeing an increase in mental health difficulties for all people. It doesn't matter whether you are a 2-year-old or a 5-year-old. It goes all the way to young adult into late adulthood. So self-care is important. So what suffering might look like when you're not taking care of self? Loss of vitality, fatigue and depletion, burnout, feeling overwhelmed, cynicism, workaholism, isolation, narrow lives, boredom, confrontation or conflict, arrogance, and helplessness. Sometimes there are other symptoms that we'll also talk about a little bit later on, like irritability and gastrointestinal issues. We'll talk about those as well. So what lack of self-care can do? What are some of the costs? we run the risk of depletion, losing perspective, and burnout if we do not focus on activities that truly renew us. Okay, so it's very, very important to take care of yourself. And I'll talk about what that looks like for different people, what self-care can look like for different people. I have a quote here that says, "An idiot can face a crisis. It's the day-to-day living that wears you out," right? I mean, we are still in a pandemic, we're facing it. However, it's the day-to-day activities that are causing a lot of issues for all of us, okay? So getting into self-care. So what does self-care look like? Identify avoidance and show up to the ongoing challenges and stressors. Sometimes people are really good at avoiding challenging issues or stressors just because they think it's not important at this moment and they keep avoiding it. Unfortunately, those issues might come back even if you're avoiding them at this very moment. Commit to self-care moves. Focus on activities that increase flexibility. And we will talk about what those activities look like. No one model exists. There are many different ways to practice self-care. For some people, it might just be taking a walk. For some people, it might be getting away from their workspace. So it can look very different for different people. Differences may relate to personal history, gender, and stage of life in terms of how self-care might look for individuals. As I said, some people might want to take 5-minute breaks. Some people might take 1 hour break. It really depends on the person's perspective. Some examples of self-care, as I mentioned, quiet walks by yourself, just to clear your mind, going somewhere and clearing your mind completely. Little meditative periods, waiting for sometimes a cancellation of a session or a meeting, a brief illness, right, are opportunities for a quiet, reflective, peaceful time. So just taking yourself out of the situation and you are essentially with yourself for a little bit. Time and space for meditation. It's great to do some mindful meditation. You don't even have to do a whole lot. All you can do is go on YouTube and put mindfulness meditation. There are tons of videos that can come up and it can really, really help people. Reading, right? Some people love to read, whether it's spiritual or fictional or biographies. Sometimes this really gives people some perspective on self-care because you're not doing what you're doing on an everyday basis. Some light exercise, not heavy exercise. If you want to do heavy exercise, that's fine. But for beginners, I think doing some light exercise might be very, very helpful. Opportunities to laugh in the company of cheerful friends. This is a little bit hard at this moment. Maybe some of you are okay meeting with friends and so on, but it might be hard for a lot of people because we're still in the middle of a pandemic and some people might not want to join. However, it's great because we have Zoom and we have other ways to connect with people. And the hope is that you can connect with people that you have not connected for a while using technology that you have at your hands. A hobby, this can be anything. Watching sports is a hobby, right? It can be knitting, it can be crocheting, it can be baking. Any kind of hobby for yourself to help you take care of yourself might be really, really helpful. Listen to music you enjoy. There is enough research out there to suggest that music actually helps people calm themselves. It calms their entire body, it calms the mind, and that's what is important when it comes to self-care. What is compassion? So we're going to shift gears here and talk about compassion and actually self-compassion. Compassion, from a Latin phrase, it's basically means co-suffering. Compassion is that which makes the heart of the good move at the pain of others. It crushes and destroys the pain of others Thus, it is called compassion. It is called compassion because it shelters and embraces the distressed. It's a nice quote by the Buddha here. And it's really, really important to be compassionate towards others. But in this situation, I think it's more important to be self-compassionate. Um, Having compassion for oneself is really no different than having compassion for others. Rather than showing compassion for other people in this situation, you're showing compassion to yourself. To have compassion for others, you must notice that they are suffering. In the same way, it is also important for you to see that you are also suffering if that's what's happening to you. Compassion involves feeling moved by others. Compassion involves feeling moved by others' suffering so that your heart responds to the pain, to suffer with. When this occurs, you feel warmth, caring, and the desire to help the suffering person in some way. And this is the same for yourself as well. It's really, really hard sometimes to identify that you're in pain. Sometimes it might be someone else who's identifying that you're in pain. Um, and then you have to really take a step back and be compassionate to yourself. Sometimes where people are really self-aware of themselves might be able to identify the pain that they're going through. And this might be helpful for them to be self-compassionate towards themselves. Having compassion also means that you offer understanding and kindness to others when they fail or make mistakes rather than judging them. And this is the same situation for yourself. We are a strong critic of ourselves. So it is very, very important to be kind to yourself and not blame yourself for every single mistakes that you make, or judge yourself for the mistakes that you make. You're human after all. You can't be perfect. We can try, but it's really, really hard. Finally, when you feel compassion for another and not as seen in pity, it means that you realize that suffering, failure, and imperfection is part of the shared human experience. As I said, we're all humans. We're not perfect. However, we strive to want to be perfect. However, unfortunately, it's not possible. Compassion fatigue. So here are some of the symptoms that people might be experiencing when there is compassionate fatigue. Work, there are three different sections that I have created here: work, emotional, and physical. In terms of work, work dread or avoidance. You don't want to do a whole lot of work, okay? And you're avoiding some part of your work because you're burning out. Lower empathy, absenteeism, which is you're not either attending work or not attending meetings or so on and so forth. Lack of enjoyment. You're not enjoying what you're doing. Um, just imagine that you have this perfect job, but unfortunately, because you are having passionate fatigue, you're not enjoying your work in that moment. Um, the other part of compassion fatigue is emotional. Here, you might feel irritability, anxiety, oversensitivity, restlessness, substance use. Some people use alcohol or marijuana or other substances in order to numb their feelings, especially numb their negative feelings. Resentment or guilt, poor judgment, and concentration. All of these play a huge role in compassionate fatigue symptoms. The next one is physical. Physical symptoms can include headaches, gastro issues, muscle tension, insomnia, fatigue, cardiac issues. So all of these issues can also occur due to compassionate fatigue as well. So all of the compassionate fatigue could potentially lead to professional burnout. This is essentially disengagement and withdrawal responses. So you are maybe not engaging in your everyday work. You might be withdrawing from your work setting. This could result from chronic neglect, okay, and self-sacrifice, always giving yourself up, right? This could also lead to emotional exhaustion, depersonalization. This is reduced empathy, right? Empathy is basically putting yourself in another person's shoes and feeling what they're feeling and experiencing based on your own experience. This you might end up lacking this due to professional burnout, a reduced sense of accomplishment. Even though you accomplished something or you completed a task, but unfortunately, due to professional burnout, you might not feel great about completing a wonderful task. Losing your passion, vision, and purpose. Sometimes this is really, really easy to do when you are burning out. Due to your sacrifices, you might lose your passion and vision and purpose. Why did you originally start this job or this process, and what led you to lose the passion or vision and purpose? Most of the time, it's professional burnout. As you know, as a lot of you people have seen, there has been a lot of people resigning from their positions because they realize that it's causing a lot of distress for them, which is leading for people to lose their passion, vision, and purpose, which then leads them to not continue their work. So what are some of the causes of professional burnout? Excessive workload, little control or autonomy in the role that you're in. Excessive workload could be the organization's fault or your own fault, where you're putting in more time and effort than the organization needs you to or wants you to. Sometimes it's the other way around, where the organization wants you to be there for a long period of time, and unfortunately, you just don't have enough time to give that particular organization. That could lead to little control or autonomy in the role, where you are basically saying that I don't have control over what I'm doing. And unfortunately, this is causing a lot of distress for me. And that could lead to professional burnout if you're not being careful in identifying these things. Failure to maintain boundaries with others. It is very, very important to maintain boundaries with people, with your job sometimes. Basically, if it's 8 to 4 or 9 to 5 job, it's very important that you put boundaries and say, this is it. I am not doing more than this. Unfortunately, people tend to do more than they are asked to do. Perfectionism. Some people tend to be perfectionistic in their personality, and that can cause professional burnout. That could lead to blurred boundaries as well, which then leads to poor self-care, because you are so perfect and you're trying to be so perfect in the work that you're doing. So that could potentially lead to poor self-care. Okay. So what else can we do in terms of self-care? Here's a nice little model that we can look at, multidimensional self-care model of how to take care of ourselves. So first, let me go back here for a moment. As you can see, the self-care is in the middle, and there are different parts here, like mind, work, relationships, body, spirit, and emotions, right? There are different parts to the multidimensional self-care model. So we'll start with body here. Diet, exercise, sleep, and general practitioner visits. These are really, really important for you all to do in order to use self-care in your workplaces. Diet, right? Having a good diet, a balanced diet, not to take away something from your everyday life, but to have a balanced diet um, um, throughout what you're eating. Exercise, 30 minutes of exercise does a great deal of things to your body. It really, really helps keep your body going. Even if this means taking a walk for 30 minutes, can really, really help your body. Sleep, getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep is very, very important. Um, Unfortunately, again, due to technology, it has really been hard for people to get enough sleep. Um, Sleep can really be helpful for people in order to take care of themselves. And of course, general practitioners visit, going to your physician and having an every year, getting yourself checked out every year might be really, really helpful too. Emotional expression, debriefing, incidents, activity that brings joy or energy. So expressing yourself, how you're really feeling, if you're feeling good or if you're not feeling good. That's also very, very important. Debriefing incidents. So this is important as well. If there was an incident that occurred in your workplace or in your life and you want to debrief it with someone so you get a different perspective on it, that's also important. Activity that bring joy or energies. Um, I think it's important to find activities that bring joy to you. Traveling is a good way to bring joy for people. Going to a warmer place. If you're already in a warmer place, that's great. But if people are not, that's also helpful for a lot of people. Stress management. In terms of the next part is the mind. Stress management, learning how to reduce your stress in different ways. Personal development. Here's a great opportunity for personal development, right? Today, coming to this webinar is part of the personal development. Mastering a new skill. This is another thing that people can do, like cooking. If you're very interested in cooking and you want to master that skill, you definitely can do that. The next part is relationships, friends, family, clubs, professional organization, and networking. Friends and family are very, very important. They help you with your relationships. Joining different clubs might be helpful as well. Professional organization, if you're a professor or working in a college setting, it might be helpful to join different professional organization. For me, it might look like American Psychological Association or a regional association for psychology. And this can potentially lead to networking as well, where you're meeting different people from different backgrounds or in the same background as you are in terms of work, and you can talk about what the differences are, what other organizations are doing that can help hopefully improve your organization and your own professional development as well. The next part is work and spiritual. Work, manageable workload. Make sure that you are communicating with people at your workplace what works and what doesn't work for you. Receive support from your peers, supervisors, and managers. Make sure that you communicate what works for you and what doesn't, what's hard, what's easy, if you need more time. These are all very important part of work-life balance and self-care. Breaks from work. Take some break from work, whether it's taking a week off. You earn those time off. They're yours to use, and it's very important. If you think it's important for you to take a break, take those days off. Sick days, take those sick days if you receive sick days from your workplace, because I think it's important to use them. You deserve those days. Meaningful, satisfying tasks. Finding tasks that are meaningful and satisfying, being on committees that are satisfying to you, and of course, professional development. As we said earlier, seeking out professional development is very, very important. Finally, the last piece of multidimensional self-care model is spiritual and meaning in life. Trying to find what your purpose is, what the meaning is of life, of your life. And sometimes religious nature and environment might be part of your spiritual journey. Some people like to go to church or temples or mosques or whatever the religious place. Some people enjoy nature, just taking a walk in nature. Some people like environment, whether it is working in the natural environment, nature, basically growing things. That can be a spiritual part for a lot of people. Another way where spirituality can play a role is helping and volunteering, helping other people, providing meals, working in a soup kitchen, or working in a group home, volunteering your time to do cleanup for people. This can go a long way for your own self-care, but it might also help other people in your environment as well as in your communities as well. So what I have here next is a video on self-care and what it really looks like. The video is about 10 minutes long, and Susanna Winters will talk about what self-care looks like for her. So here we go.
When was the last time you were stressed out? I take that as on your way here. Maybe you were on your way to work, running late and stuck in traffic. Or were you at home? These body sensations so often, we don't even know the difference now. So indulge me for a minute. If you have anything in your hands, just set it aside. Plant your feet firmly on the ground. Close your eyes. Inhale with me, in through the nose. Exhale through the mouth. Inhale through the nose. Exhale through the mouth. When you're ready, open your eyes. Congratulations, you just practiced self-care. It can be that simple. Unfortunately, the $10 billion self-care industry doesn't want you to think so. There's this myth that's fed by Instagram posts and countless advertisements that self-care is a spa day, pedicures and Prosecco, a weekend-long Netflix binge, anything pumpkin spice related. All these indulgences are great, but they're not self-care. We're left chasing these perfect self-care experiences, and they don't actually restore us. So we're left with a question: if that's not self-care, what is self-care and how do I practice it? Self-care is deliberately taking care of your well-being through restorative activities. One of the greatest threats for our well-being is physical and emotional stress. Stress is one of the leading causes of healthcare issues in America. And we experience it every day. We experience stress by what we put in our bodies, what we put on our bodies, the thoughts that we think, and the choices that we make throughout our day. Some of the most stressful things that we can put in our bodies are sugar, alcohol, excessive caffeine, and processed foods. Those are also some of the most consumed items in America. So with all this stress impacting our immune system, our energy levels, our emotional well-being, it's essential that our self-care practice does the opposite. About a year ago, a coworker asked me what I did for self-care. I cringed when she asked me that question. I said, I eat and I sleep and that's enough, totally brushing her off. At the time, I was managing a high volume retail business in Washington, D.C. My husband and I were starting a company and we're raising our 2-year-old son. I started every day with coffee and a scone, went to work, had very few breaks, and finished my day watching Netflix and scrolling on my phone. I was in complete denial about what I needed to do to take care of myself. Ultimately, I burned out and I quit my job. I decided to pursue a passion of mine and I began working as a labor doula and a childbirth educator. Now, a large aspect of that job is to support pregnant women and prepare pregnant women to be as relaxed as possible during what could be a stressful event in a stressful environment. And I learned really quickly that to be successful at that, I had to be a relaxing presence, which meant I had to take care of myself. And that's when I discovered how to practice self-care. My foundation began as a diet rich in fruits, vegetables, and whole plant-based foods. And then I added in 3 restorative activities to make my self-care practice. The first, moments of stillness and in silence. We just practiced this a few minutes ago. We are bombarded by noise every day. The TV, the radio, traffic, our kids yelling at us. But the loudest noise of all is the voice in our heads. We have roughly 60,000 thoughts a day, and for some of us, 80% of those thoughts are negative. When we meditate and have moments of stillness and silence, it brings awareness to that internal voice. And when we have that awareness, that's when we can choose what thoughts we're holding on to and which we want to let go of. We can also adjust the volume on how loud that internal voice is. The first time I meditated, I was sitting in a chair and I immediately got squirmy and my back started hurting and my internal voice got so loud and it was talking about all the things I should be getting done on my to-do list versus sitting doing nothing. But I committed to 5 minutes a day and slowly but surely that voice got quieter. I have one suggestion for starting a powerful meditation or stillness practice, and it's simply to be comfortable. You don't need to sit in a straight back, rigid chair. You can actually be comfortable on your couch. I actually encourage you to be as comfortable as possible without falling asleep. The second restorative activity I added in was movement. This could be walking, running, dancing, yoga, jumping jacks on your living room floor. Our bodies are meant to move. And when we move and when we exercise, it creates endorphins, which first, they help sleep, which naturally reduces our stress. And it also sends a positive feeling through the body that's similar to that of morphine. You don't need a fancy gym or trainer to do this, although they may help sometimes. And just 10 minutes a day makes a difference. The last restorative activity I added in was time in nature. According to environmental psychology, time in nature will improve your mood, reduce stress, and improve cognitive function. And the Environmental Protection Agency says that the average person spends 93% of their life indoors. So we're left with this incredible opportunity to support our well-being simply by going outside. We are animals of nature, and we often live completely disconnected from our natural environment. We may go days, if not weeks, without our bare hands or feet touching the ground. My son, he's almost 3 years old. He's the most kinesthetic child out there. He loves being outside. If I let him, he'd spend all day outside, in the backyard, at the beach. And when he's outside, he's not just being outside. He is rubbing his hands into the dirt. He is touching leaves, trees, and catching frogs. And I could never understand why his shoes didn't stay on his feet for more than 5 minutes. But maybe he was onto something. The term earthing is now being used to describe your bare hands or feet on the ground, our earth. And there's a renowned cardiologist who says that the reduction of inflammation due to earthing can actually be documented by infrared imaging and white blood cell count. Some of the other benefits include reduced stress, improved sleep, improved circulation. So it's no surprise to me that when my son spends most of the day outside, he naps, he sleeps like a rock, he eats everything I give him, and there's very few emotional outbursts. When you combine these activities and practice them daily, it will support your mood, increase your energy, increase your joy. Imagine if you practice self-care for 30 minutes a day, 10 minutes of stillness, 10 minutes of movement, 10 minutes of time in nature, on top of a diet that is rich in whole plant-based foods. That's over 180 hours of self-care in a year. But I'm so busy. When am I going to get time for 30 minutes a day of self-care? Well, we can start by looking at the 5 hours a day that the average person watches TV, or the 50 minutes a day that we spend on social media. We can start there. But before you get worried about adding a self-care practice onto your never-ending to-do list, remember that it is a practice. It's not about getting it right or having the perfect self-care photos for your social media. It's about showing up for yourself every day. What would be possible for you if you showed up for yourself? Thank you.
So that was a nice video, and that is all I really have for you all, unless you all have any questions or thoughts or anything. I'll open the floor up here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Berdikar, and thank you all for attending today. I am going to give you a good minute or two to feel free to use that Q&A chat down below. In the meantime, if you or any of your fellow instructors are interested in presenting for our Learning and Growing webinar series, please submit your proposals to Learning and Growing website, which I will link in the chat now. Also, Emmanuel, to answer your question, the recording and the PowerPoint will be shared to you via email following this presentation today.
I'm also open to any suggestions other than for self-care, other than what I have talked about today, so we can all share our self-care ideas as well. So you can ask questions or anything that you want.
Dr. Berdikar, if you wouldn't mind typing in your email into that chat below so anyone can reach out to you if they need. But other than that, thank you all so much for coming out and attending today. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to reach out to us via that marketing email I've listed in the chat. Have a great rest of your day, everybody, and thank you so much for coming on out.